Like
Okay.
that, upkeep, draw.
Any responses?
That's pretty good.
It resolves.
Go to combat. Pay the 1.
Board wipe.
In response.
So I will pass the turn there.
What's up, guys? This is Spence with the Rule Zero podcast, where we discuss before we cuss. Let's talk about Sauron. So today I've got my Sauron deck. With the new stuff coming out with the Hobbit, I've upgraded a bit, and so we're gonna go through that and show you how I built this. So we're gonna get right to it. So Sauron the Dark Lord. Pretty simple with what he does. So he's got a ward ability, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. So that sucks if you're the opponents. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. Whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. And whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, you draw 4 cards. Like I said, pretty simple. Not at all. A lot of different stuff you got to keep track with Sauron, but I really think he's one of the best commanders out there. He's a 7/6 for 6 mana, which makes him a little bit harder in the late game to get him out. Or you have to wait till the late game to get him out. But I mean, once he's out, he is a force to be reckoned with. So let's talk about what we got in here. So we got the Witch King of Angmar, Worn Soul Trader, the Great Goblin. I'll set that one aside. That one's actually brand new. That one came from the Hobbit. Smog Wicked Worm, another Hobbit card. Sourbread Ante, Siege Gang Commander, Skuz Grounger, Saruman the White Hand, Pitiless Plunderer, Orcish Bowmasters. Actually, I just pulled this one out of as a box topper, I don't remember, a collector booster or something like that, but I just pulled that one. We got all 9 Nazgul and all different arts. So those are right there. Moria Scavenger, Morbid Opportunist, the Mirkwood Bats, Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, Krenko Mob Bass, Howl Squad Heavy, Gothmog Morgul Lieutenant, General Crete the Boltbringer, Fell Beast of Mordor, Disciple of Bolas, and Beetleback Chief. Okay, most of these are goblins and or do some things with the goblin theme. So that's what this deck is. This is Sauron and I wanted to build an army of goblins with him. I'm not a huge fan of the amass orc army. To me, an orc army is actually should have been make a 1/1 orc, or something along that effect. I don't like the fact of building a big creature without any sort of evasion that does, a 1/1 bunny can block him, a 1/1 squirrel. So I ended up changing the deck a little bit from the pre-con, and I wanted to go a lot more on the goblin army side of things, building an army of goblins. I know in the Hobbit you can mass an army of goblins, or an army goblin or whatever, but that's not what I want to do. So yeah, I mean, we'll get through this. Beetleback Chief makes 2 goblins. General Crete makes a goblin. House Squad Heavy makes a goblin on combat on your turn. Krenko is the goblin commander. Krenko Tin Street Kingpin makes goblins. Get through here. Scuzzback Scrounger. Actually, he makes a treasure token. Blight 1, so you're going to take a +1 counter off the orc army you make to make a treasure token every turn. Siege Gang Commander makes goblins. Sourbread Ante makes goblins. And I think out of my creatures, I mean, Saruman's good. He makes an orc army. You amass orcs, but then it's goblins and orcs you control have ward too, so add a little bit of protection there. The Nazgul, yeah, a little bit of a goblin theme here. Worn Soul Trader is a zombie goblin. You can pay 1, sacrifice another creature, hopefully one of your goblins, make a treasure token. Let's talk about the Great Goblin here. So the Great Goblin, whenever you put 1 or more counters on a goblin, orc, or army control, the Great Goblin deals 2 damage to target opponent. That's awesome with Sauron. It basically dares your opponents to play the game. You want to cast a spell so I can amass an orc army? Well, then I'm going to put a counter on a goblin, and I'm going to shoot you for 2 damage. Then whenever another goblin, orc, or army control dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of turn. Not really built around that aspect, but I mean, I'm sure it can come in handy. It's impulse draw. But the main focus on Great Goblin is that you're daring your opponents to play the game. Smog Wicked Worm is another really good source of card draw in this, actually. So, Smog Wicked Worm, when he enters, create X tap treasure tokens where X number of artifacts your opponent's control. Geez, reminds me of a goblin I could have had in the deck if it was unbanned. Whenever you cast a spell, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So really good source of card draw there. Let's get into our ramp pieces or other stuff going on. We got Thought Vessel, the One Ring, Talisman of Indulgence, Talisman of Dominance, Talisman of Creativity, the Soul Ring, Relic of Sauron, My Precious, that's a new one, Wizard Staff, also a new one. Real quick, okay, My Precious, one of my favorite cards from The Hobbit. It's an equipment that equipped creature has hexproof and cannot be blocked. And the equip is pay 2 generic and pay 2 life. But he also has an adventure on it. As an additional cost of the spell, cast or sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. So you're going to sacrifice the orc army that you're guaranteed to get every turn if your opponents are playing spells, and then you can draw 2 cards off of that. Wizard Staff, which I personally believe is the most underrated card from The Hobbit. So I would collect these as much as possible and throw them in all of my decks that would benefit. It does not have to be a wizard to equip it. Equipped creature has prowess. If an ability of equipped creature triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Equip wizard is 1, or equip is 3 mana. Really, really good with Sauron. There's a couple reasons why. So Sauron, first off, whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. You're gonna, with this on there, you're gonna amass orcs 1 twice because it's a trigger ability. The other thing that's interesting is ward is a trigger. So it becomes ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature, and it triggers an additional time. So it really, really protects Sauron in that sense for targeted removal, which you all should be running. You guys should all be running more interaction and targeted removal. All right. Village Rites. Again, you're going to utilize that token that you're making, the orc army. Sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Fling. Absolutely. You're going to, again, hopefully your opponents keep casting spells. And when you're ready to kill them off with a fling and sacrifice your army, you do it. Deals damage equal to sacrifice creature's power to any target. Deadly Dispute, another instant speed, sacrifice a creature. Draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Dark Ritual for ramp, Culling the Weak, another one where you have to sacrifice a creature, but then you end up getting 4 black mana for it. Counter Spell, Cabal Ritual, Arcane Signet, Victimize. Victimize is another one that you're going to utilize that army token. So whenever, choose 2 target creatures in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped for 3 mana. And again, if your opponents are casting the spells, you're going to get a free, basically you kill a creature for free on that one. Toxic Deluge, Torment of Hellfire, Diabolic Intent, again, another one of those sacrifice a creature. This one, you get to look for a card, put that card in your hand, then shuffle. Rite of Consumption is basically a fling at sorcery speed. Sacrifice a creature. It deals damage equal to sacrifice creature's power to target player. You gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So, like I said, another fling for you. Rage into the Valley. That one's a Hobbit card. You draw a card, lose 1 life, amass Army 2, or Goblin Army 2. Krenko's Command to make more goblins. Goblin Negotiation to make more goblins. Dragon Fodder to make more goblins. Okay, this one's a new one from Lorwyn. So Eventide Shadow. Remove any number of counters from among permanents on the battlefield. You draw cards and lose life equal to the number of counters removed this way. It is 5 mana, but you're going to be removing a lot of the counters from your mass armies. You can remove counters from planeswalkers, and you can remove remove any number of counters from among permanents on the battlefield. I feel like you get the storage counters, the what's the new spaceship mechanic? You store the counters, charge counters. That's what they're called, charge counters. So you can remove those counters as well. But then you draw cards and you lose 1 life for each counter removed this way. Again, life is a resource. You're going to be drawing cards, which is what you want to do. And then Chandra's Ignition. This is like the ultimate fling. So target creature you control deals damage to its power, equal to its power, to each other creature and each opponent. So you're going to board wipe and hopefully win the game with that. Okay, we'll keep going here. In the Darkness, Bind Them. That one's great because every turn for the first 3 turns, you're going to be creating a 3/3 Wraith and the ring tempts you. If you have the other Nazgul on there, all those Wraiths are going to be huge, but then you can constantly rotate your hands with the ring tempting you and being able to draw cards from your commander. Call of the Ring at the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you, so another really good synergy with your commander. And then card draw, so you can choose whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life if you do draw a card. Remember, life is a resource. And then last thing that's not a land is Bogart Mischief. When this enchantment enters the battlefield, you may blight 1. Again, you'll just take put a -1/-1 counter on your orc army, and you'll be just fine because it's going to get that counter right back. If you do, create 2 1/1 black and red goblin creature tokens. Whenever a goblin creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Hopefully, you're going to have a ton of goblins in this deck running around. Lands. So we go Steam Vents, Wooded Foothills, Watery Grave, the Wasteland. This is the Valley of Gorgoroth on mine. The Dead Marshes, or Urborg of Tomb of Yawgmoth, the Black Gate, 4 Swamps, Sisser. This is one of those, I can never say this one. Secundi Void Altar. This one's really cool. It's from Edge of Eternity. Enters tapped, adds black mana, but you can station it. So you can put those charge counters on here as well. Again, hopefully from your orc army. 1 in the black, tap, pay 2 life, sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, activate only as a sorcery. So again, it's card draw on a land, and you're going to be hitting your orc army that your opponents are going to keep giving you. Sunken Hollow, I'm going to set that one aside and talk about that one. And Sulphur Falls, that falls in the same category. Scalding Tarn, Rogue's Passage, Reflecting Pool, Polluted Delta, Mount Doom, 4 Mountains, Midgar, the City of Mako. This one's interesting. It's actually a brand new card that I decided to put in the deck and try it out. So you got the Adventure side where you can sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, and then it's also a land that enters tapped. Good segue in here. I really don't like my lands entering tapped, but where this is basically a free slot for an instant or sorcery, in this case a sorcery that's card draw, and it pays off for itself with the land entering tapped, I think I'm okay with that. Excuse me. The other thing, Sunken Hollow and Sulphur Falls. I try to keep my lands from entering tapped at all costs. So Sunken Hollow is fetchable. It's an island swamp. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. That's easy. In a 3-color deck, you should be having 2 or more basic lands. And then this one, Sulphur Falls, enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a mountain. This is fetchable. This enters untapped because this is already an island and it matches that, so it enters untapped. Utilize your lands. Try not to let them enter tapped unless there is a really good reason for that. The surveil lands are really good. They're fetchable and they surveil you a card. So they do enter tapped, so unless you're planning on using that mana right then and there. It depends on the deck and what I run it in. In this deck I don't have the surveil lands in, but I do have the Final Fantasy lands that do that. All right. Marsh Flats, Jador. I don't play Final Fantasy, so I'm gonna botch this name. Jador Aristocratic Capital. Holy smokes, that was a mouthful. 6 mana sorcery. Target opponent mills half their library, rounded down. Yeah, that's target removal. That's removing half their library. If that's not removal, I don't know what is. And then it does enter tapped. 3 islands, a flooded strand, a field of the dead. That's going to make a bunch of zombie tokens after you get a bunch of lands out there. Fabled Passage, Dragon Skull Summit, another one that enters untapped if you have Swamp or Mountain. Command Tower, Bloodstained Mire, Blood Crypt, Bajuku Bog, which is great graveyard hatred. Barad-dûr, which amasses orcs, and Balin's Tomb, or an ancient tomb. So technically, I guess this is a bracket 3 deck. I would say probably in that bracket 3, mid bracket 3, maybe a low bracket 4. I mean, we'll get into stats here in just a second, but yeah, it is a very fast and powerful deck in my opinion. So let's get into the stats and grab this. So all right, whenever I deck build, I use my flashcards. So I've got my commander. We'll do card advantage here, or land, ramp, mass destruction, target destruction, the plan, and enhancers. So right off the bat, I mean, I've got 38 lands in this deck. I'm going to move some of these lands around here, though. Let's set these lands aside. I'll show you what I'm doing here. Okay, so these lands, I believe, let's see, there's going to be about 30 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 31 lands. Again, I have 38 lands in this deck. So 31 lands are that. They are there for the 31 lands, or for that land slot. Valley of Gorgoroth. Sacrifice Valley Gorgoroth. Destroy target non-basic land. That is definitely a target disruption in that sense. I've got a Rogue's Passage in here. Well, if you have a Rogue's Passage and I don't want you to have that, I'm going to use my Wasteland and get rid of it. Or a Gaia's Cradle, or there's any number of lands that are considered threatening, I think, in the game. Rogue's Passage, I'm going to throw that as an enhancer. It just makes target creature cannot be blocked this turn. That should win the game. Mount Doom, you can pay 7 mana, sacrifice Mount Doom and a legendary artifact, choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest. I think I only have one legendary artifact, and that is the One Ring. Frankly, that should also just say win the game if I throw the One Ring in Mount Doom. But I'm going to put that as a mass disruption. And, it's going to be a board wipe, and I don't know. If it ever happens, it's because I probably tutored for it to happen. We would, I don't think that's really reliable. Card advantage. So Sasur, that land that you can sack a creature, draw cards, that's going to go under card advantage. Midar, that's going to go under card advantage. Again, it's another on the instant side, or on the adventure side, you're going to draw cards. Jador, we're going to put that one as a target disruption. It is it's targeting one opponent and they're milling half their library. I'd still say put that as a target disruption instead of mass disruption. Just again, you're targeting the one opponent. And then Barad-dûr, we're going to put that under the plan because it does amass armies, activate. So it's 2x and a black. Tap it to amass orcs, activate only if a creature died this turn. Again, you're going to be flinging your creatures and sacrificing your creatures. So you should be able to recoup what you sacrifice with that card. Okay, Bogart Mischief. When this enters the battlefield, you may blight one. If you do, create 2 goblins. Whenever a goblin creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. You gain 1 life. I'm going to put it like right here in between. It is the plan, but it's also an enhancer. We're actually going to throw it in the enhancers. Call of the Ring. Again, it also is an enhancer because it tempts you, but I'm going to throw it under card advantage. Just because every time you're tempted by the ring, you can choose a new ring bearer, draw a card, but then it's also repeatable being tempted by the ring. So your commander, you're going to be, hopefully, depending on, if you need to refill your hand, you can always draw 4 cards off of that. And Darkness Binds Them, going to be the same reason. Chandra's Ignition. I probably should put it somewhere in here, like just to win the game, but I'll throw that in under enhancers because that should just win the game. Eventides, that's going to be card advantage. The goblin cards, make a goblin. Those are going to go under the plan. Rage into the Valley. We're going to throw that into card advantage. Rite of Consumption. We'll throw that in. Oh, you know what? Here. Chandra's Ignition will throw in Mass Disruption. Rite of Consumption into target disruption. Diabolic Intent, that's going to be card advantage. Torment of Hellfire, that's mass disruption. Toxic Delusion, mass disruption. Victimize, that's the sacrifice a creature, return 2 creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's going to target disruption. It's going to be you killed one of my creatures. I'm going to bring 2 of those creatures back. Arcane Denials also target disruption. Cabal Ritual, that's going to be under ramp. Counterspells under target Disruption, Culling of the Weak is ramp, Dark Rituals ramp, Deadly Dispute is card advantage. Fleeing, we're going to do Fleeing as target. Disruption, Village Rights is card advantage. My commander is kind of in a couple different areas. We'll throw him in that command spot. Wizard Staff, definitely an enhancer. My Precious, we're going to throw that actually in card advantage because you do sacrifice a creature, draw a card. And then after you're done, we'll throw it into enhancers for the equipped creature that's hexproof and cannot be blocked. Relic of Sauron's ramp, Soul Ring's ramp, Talismans are ramp. The One Ring is card advantage. I mean, you can see pretty quickly the Great Goblin, that's going to be an enhancer. Worn Soul Traders is under ramp. Yeah, you can see pretty quickly, especially like since I have it all laid out with my cards here, with my flashcards. You can throw a deck really quickly through one of these and go, okay, where am I heavy? Where do I need more of? So you can go through here and just see, card advantage here. That's going to be the plan. That's the plan. That's an enhancer. That's card advantage. That's somewhere in here. I mean, you can see where I'm going with this. But anyways, so that is my Sauron deck. Here we'll throw the rest of these. Those are the plan. That's going to be like ramp, plan, goblins. Those all make goblins, and then treasures. We'll put that in the card advantage because it's more or less actually you want to use that to draw cards. Anyway, so the whole goal of this deck again is to make goblins, amass a ton of the goblins. Amass the orc army that you're going to use for all your sacrifice outlets. You don't necessarily want to touch your goblins with those, and then swing out for damage. Hopefully you can make a ton of mana also with some of like the Worn Soul Trade and all that, and you can drop out. You can drop something like a Torment of Hellfire to win the game, or a Chandra's Ignition to win the game. But there's a couple different ways to do this. So all in all, real quick, the stats of this game or of this deck. So let me switch over here. I've said in previous content that you want to be between the 170 and 200 mana pips range. What that means, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Mirkwood Bats is 3 and a black, so that's 4. Great Goblin is 3 in mana pips, so that's 7 in total. Wizard Staff is 2, so that would be 9 in total. You can go through here. Lands are 0, so lands don't cost you mana at all. That's I think part of the reason why some of those adventure lands and that enter taps have such a big reflection on this, because they don't reflect off of your total mana pips, but you're able to use them in a couple different ways. So total of this pip, let me pull it up here, is 179 mana value in the deck, which is awesome. Like I said, it's right there in that sweet spot you want to be at. You want to be between 170 and 200. Now a lot of people go, well, why? That seems way too overkill, to look at, or way too optimized for my table. Well, I would argue that the more fun you have with Magic is because your deck is doing well and you're not sitting around waiting for people to play the game. So if you want your deck to perform well and to actually do the thing, build your deck correctly, and in my suggestion, build it under or close to that 200 mana pip down to 170 in that range, and you'll find that your deck is way more consistent and it's a really fun deck to play. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Again, this is the Rule Zero podcast. Discuss before you cuss. Thanks so much.